Hey, Larry here. Acts 29 today, The Journey. Coming to you from Sunny World headquarters in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I'd like to welcome all the viewers from Thailand and from around the world to this edition where we will be journeying on this pathway of transformation. I have come to realize even more how important this journey of transformation really is. And wow. I talked a little bit about it on the last one, the deconstruction thing, because I didn't realize just, how prevalent that is, how many people are involved in that, and so I can see now how, the danger is in the transition from going from one place to another in God, that some people, when they see stuff that, they need to walk away from or relearn, they don't just go deeper into God, they go completely away from God and away from transformation. And so that is the extremely dangerous part of this thing. But I don't think it'll take long, but I'll do a couple videos on that whole thing. But I just watched that mega pastor he just came completely off the rails. And for him, he's an atheist now. He has completely denied the faith. He didn't just leave the building or the brand of Christianity or the Bible. He left everything. He left his faith. He's an atheist, self-proclaimed atheist. I saw Chuck Swindoll Jr., not senior, junior, not Chuck Swindoll, the one that you know about, who's preached his whole lifetime and everything. No, he's fine, even though I think he's in his 91 or something. No, he's still on the tracks, doing good. But his son, Chuck Swindoll Jr., is deconstructed and is an atheist. And there are many others. The guy that has the channel that I watched a few of these on, he's got like almost 48,000 subscribers, and he's done now probably over 540 or 50 videos interviewing these people who have deconstructed. And it's pretty amazing, I knew the apostasy was here, but I hadn't seen it to that degree, not with people who were so entrenched in the faith for so many years apostatizing. To me, that was amazing, and I had to listen to find out where exactly did they come off the rails, where did they get off the path, and what took them off. and it's pretty much all of them for a lot of the same reasons. So anyway, I'll do a couple videos on that coming up, but I need to continue on here with the problem with faith, because that's where we're at here. So last week we ended up, I was talking about my mom and what she went through, and her discovering of Mark 11:23 and 24. For truly I say unto you that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed and cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart. Now you may have some doubts in your mind. That's okay. They'll come and go. You can capture those. But the doubt in the heart is the problem. Shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he says shall come to pass. He shall have whatsoever he saith. Okay, now, no reason for people to go in the ditch here. But of course, some people are, and they're gonna, go, well, oh, okay, well, I'm saying I've got a new big house and car and blah, blah, blah. Well, therefore I say unto you, whatsoever things you desire when you pray, believe that you receive them. When do you believe that you receive them? When you pray. And you will have them. You believe when you pray, present tense, and you shall have them, future tense. And for those that want to call it, name it, and claim it, and these people that are speaking all this weird stuff, into existence or whatever, that's why we have 1 John 5:14. And this is the confidence, the assurance, privilege, boldness, which we have in him. We are sure that if we ask anything, any request, according to his will. Okay, there's the caveat. According to his will. What's his will? His word. Or his plan for your life that hopefully you're praying out in the Spirit. It has to be according to his plan, his will. So, if you're speaking, a $6 million yacht and blah, 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 that's foolishness. Okay? That's not what it's saying. You're still a child, if that's what you're thinking. According to his will, in agreement with his own plan. He listens to and hears us, and since we positively know that he listens to us in whatever we ask, that's according to his will, we also know with settled and absolute knowledge that we have granted to us as our what? Our present possessions, the request made of him. These are absolutely key verses and key truths that we have to get straight. And this is the problem with faith, the physical versus the unseen realm. This is where it all happens. We're supposed to be living by faith because our real life is hid with God in Christ. And when Christ appears, we appear with him. So our life is really hidden. That's why people would look at me and say, "Brother man, you need to get a life." You need to get a life. you're in a wilderness here, you know. It's just you, basically. And here you are in this little cubicle and this little house, and you know, you're not out there winning the world. You're not, you know, building a big platform. You're not building a big mega church. You know, you're just here in this little place doing this little thing, you know. So I ended last week talking about my dad and how he finally came to faith. But I want to go back just a little bit because I need to mention this one very important thing. My mother was also going to a Wednesday night Bible study little fellowship group in this couple's basement in Portland, Oregon, right across the river from Vancouver, Washington State. And so she'd been going there for quite a while. And when she began to get this revelation of believing she received when she prayed, she announced one night in the meeting, and these meetings usually had anywhere from 10 to 25 people, something like that. And so one night she announced that she had believed Mark 11:23 and 24, and so she had quit praying for her family and started believing that they were already saved. And she said, I prayed the last time for my family. I believed I received them when I prayed, and now I will have what I say. And I say they're saved, filled with the Spirit, serving God. And the night she said that, she was on one of the side front rows, and there was 3 empty chairs next to her. And just amazingly enough, she said, she looked over and she said, in fact, she said, I'm going to reserve these 3 chairs because this is where my family is going to be sitting. And I believe they're already there. They're already sitting in these 3 chairs. I've already received them. And so they got a piece of paper and folded it and you know, put my dad's name, my brother's name, and my name, reserved for us. Well, you know, the response was kind of mixed. You know, some people thought she was probably, you know, gone off the deep end a little bit or whatever, and so, but you know, nobody really said anything to her about it. She just said that, and then every week after that, she would just, you know, share and thank God that her family was born again, filled with the Spirit, and serving God, and that they were sitting in these 3 chairs by faith. Well, then it was about 1 year later when she got healed of that incurable disease, and that's when my dad, he just couldn't take it, you know, because he knew this disease, he knew what it did to her, and the whole thing. So when she was healed, he said, wow, this God must be real. It's the kind of God I want to serve. So he repented and believed on Jesus as his Savior. So the next Wednesday night, she took him to the Bible study. And they walked in, and he sat down next to her in his reserved chair. Yeah. And some people were like, wow, who's that guy? Wonder if that's her husband. Is that her husband? Well, it was her husband. And then he shared, what had happened. Well, then time went on. And, people on the outside tried to discourage her and talk about, you're crazy and blah, blah, blah. But you couldn't shake her faith. Because see, she already had it. She already knew this was a revelation. This wasn't in her head, it was in her heart. This had already happened. It's a done deal. Okay, it's non-negotiable. Okay, anything other than the truth of her family already being saved was non-negotiable. No, I'm not going there. They're saved. That's the end of the story. It was hers. And that's where we have to be in our faith when we're believing for things and people. And after I got saved, I shared my testimony at many different places, and some places was like the Women's Glow. They were the big meeting for women back in the day, and but whenever I shared my testimony, I always told the women, especially the mothers, because that's how this happened through my mother. I said, look, you're gonna go home and try this probably. You're gonna pray one last time, and then you're gonna start confessing that your family's saved, or your husband's saved, or whoever. But chances are, as you go along and time passes and you don't see anything happening in the natural, maybe it getting worse, your faith is going to be tested. And most people, they don't make it. They end up with the circumstances are so overwhelming that they give up, because the strength of their faith was never there in the first place. It was never built up to that place where they could stand. And so I always encourage them, and God may work with you different than her. That's fine. But if you're going to stand in faith for anything, your faith needs to be built up on your most holy, building yourself up on your most holy faith. Of course, praying in tongues is the best way to do that, through the word and worship and all that. If you get built up on your most holy faith and you get that strength spiritually, then you'll be able to stand and survive the storms that come, because your faith will be tested. Well, about a year later, my brother, who was 7 years older than me, he was married now and had a couple kids, and I used to go over to their place a lot whenever I came up north on a drug run, and I'd stay with them, and we drank a lot and partied and stuff, just as a family. And so, and he told me what happened to my dad and stuff, and I had been to the house, and my dad had talked to me about it and all that, but it didn't do anything for me. But about a year after my dad got saved, my brother, for some reason, I don't know, my mom or somebody invited him to an Easter service at the church where they were going. And for whatever reason, I don't know why he would do this, but I didn't know what was going on in his life really and all that. But he went to this service on Easter. And somebody prophesied during the service about, somebody being there that, really this was their day. They really needed to come to Christ today. And the prophecy went on about their life, and so it kind of was like reading his mail. And he was like, oh my word, they're talking to me. That's me. So at the end of the service, he went up and repented and believed on the Lord Jesus for salvation and forgiveness of sins, and became born again. And of course, my dad and him, they both got spirit-filled immediately, because that's just the way it was in those days. And so on the next Wednesday night after that happened, she invited him to go to the Wednesday night Bible study. So he went to the Wednesday night Bible study, came in. Oh, he's got a reserved seat next to my dad. So my mom sits down, my dad sits down, and my brother sits down. And people are going, huh? Wow. Oh, maybe this stuff really works. 2 out of 3 of them are in the chair. They're in the chairs. Well, so there's one chair left, right? Got my name on it. But I'm a little bit of a different breed of cat, and I'm 1,000 miles away or so, selling drugs, partying most every night, going to rock concerts, just living my best life now. And got money, got drugs, got girls, got the beach, got a nice Volkswagen Bug, and life's good. Yeah, I was living my best life now. But and sometimes when I was up there in the town, some people would see me that knew who I was, that I was her son and stuff, and they knew her and what she believed and all this. And they'd tell her, oh, I saw Larry today, oh, he looked so terrible, his hair's so long, he got these weird clothes on, wow, he looks terrible. Looks like he's on drugs. My mom, she just smiled and go, oh, if you only knew what I knew. If you only saw what I see, then you'd understand that Larry is just fine. He's just fine. He's born again, filled with the Spirit, and serving God. And the lady would look at her a little strange and go, well, he didn't look like that to me today. But it didn't bother my mom at all. She wasn't moved by that at all. What she saw, what she heard, what she might have felt at times, she wasn't moved by that at all. And now 2 out of the 3 were already in the chairs. So I was, what chance did I have? Well, yeah, I was a long ways away. And I remember I went up north, and I drove this time, for whatever reason. And I remember that I had to stay at my parents' house for about a week or something. And I was really dreading it because I was dreading my mom, she's gonna be putting this cassette tape out about the end of the world and turn it on when I walk in. She's gonna be playing Catherine Coleman on Sunday morning loud, and she's gonna be talking to me about going to hell and everything, and I just wasn't looking forward to that. But to my shock and awe, she not only believed I was born again and filled with the Spirit and serving God, she actually treated me like I was already born again. She never said a word about Jesus, nothing. Never said a word. Hi, son, how you doing? How's it going? Need some breakfast? Didn't matter what time I got in or if I didn't get in. Hey, how you doing? You want some dinner or lunch? Whatever it was. Just so nice. Just treated me with such love and respect, and yeah, it got my attention. I was like, is this not the same woman? This is not my mother of a few years ago. There was a huge transformation because she was walking in the love of God. The love of God. And I remember one time I flew up, took some drugs in this big suitcase. It was full of drugs. In those days, there were no dogs at the airport. There was nobody checking anything. So it was not a big deal to fly with a suitcase full of drugs. But when I got off the plane and went to get my bag, it didn't, it wasn't on the carousel. So I was pretty concerned, and I went to baggage claim office and said, hey, my bag never came. And so they took my baggage ticket. We had baggage stubs in those days, and they said, well, we'll find it and we'll give you a call. So I went out to the house, and my mom says, well, where's your suitcase? Where's your bag? I said, well, it didn't come. It got lost or something, I don't know. And she said, well, that's no problem, son. She said, Father, in the name of Jesus, I ask you to find Larry's bag. Thank you, Father. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think Jesus is going to find Larry's bag full of drugs. Pretty sure that's not happening. Well, I don't think it was the next day. I think it was the second day. The airlines called and said, oh, we got your bag. Somebody picked up the wrong bag, took it home, and didn't even look at it for a while, and then they looked at it. Of course, it was locked. They didn't have the key, and they discovered, oh, this is a wrong bag. They brought it back to the airport. So I went over to pick up the bag, and I thought, yeah, this could be a little bit of a trap here, and there could be police waiting around somewhere. I had all this weird stuff. I went in, gave them my tag, and they gave me the bag. It was still locked. I walked out, and I could almost hear people telling me to stop and blah, blah. Got to the car, drove away, and nothing happened, and sold all the drugs and did the normal deal. Stuff like that happened. So I was up there, and I had my car, my little bug, and VW, and so I was going to be living in San Diego for a long time, and I didn't really want to tell my mom that I didn't know if I'd ever be back or whatever, because it would upset her. But the day finally came, and I was leaving, and I thought, well, I have to tell her. So it was the day I was leaving, and I got to the door, and it was just me and her, and I said, hey, I'm going back to San Diego, of course, and I'm gonna be living there probably the rest of my life. That's where everything is for me. And I said, I honestly don't know if I'll ever be back. And I was waiting for the hammer to drop. And she said, well, son, she said, you don't belong to me any longer. You belong to God. I gave you to God. And now you're His. Now you're in His hands. Now He's in control. I gave you to God. So you can go anywhere you want or you need, stay as long as you want, do whatever you want, because you are in God's hands now. Bye-bye. Gave me a hug and a kiss, and I stumbled out the door. And I was walking to my bug, and I thought, wow, what was that? I got in, I drove off, and I remember I couldn't shake it out of my mind all the way well, I might have drove straight through. It was about a 16-hour drive if you really got on it. And, but I heard it in my head all the way. I gave you away. I gave you to God. You're not mine any longer. I gave you to God. You belong to Him now. And He'll take good care of you. I was like, my own mother gave me away. Wow. Because I didn't know if there was a God. So, anyway, I got back to San Diego, and some things started going kind of sideways in the drug business, and one of my partners, I had two partners. One of them was a manager of a big Safeway store, and we used to go in there and buy $400 worth of groceries, the best steaks, seafood, wine, beer, whatever, and we'd go through his checkout, and he'd charge us $50 for $400 worth of food. And he did this for a number of years. Well, he got caught. And then I think he went to jail for a while. And then the other guy that I worked with, he was a little bit on the loopy side, And he was having some problems, and it was causing problems with the drugs and stuff. And then there was a girl that really wanted to marry me, I think. And now she must have been totally out of her mind. But anyway, she was always around, and I didn't like her, and did everything to try to stay away from her, but she was just always there, and just an annoyance. So all this stuff was going on, and one night after a big party where we broke this key apart and was making it into smaller lids to sell, and people that didn't make it home were passed out on the floor, and the place smelled of beer and cigarette smoke and weed, and I remember I was going to go to bed, and I went in the bedroom, and the bed was full of people, just laid out across the bed. And I went back out, and I sat on a stool in the kitchen at a counter, and I looked around, and I thought, wow, is this it? I have everything. Is this it? Is this all there is to life? And so that began my questionings of, okay, so I've done all this, and I thought this is what everybody in life is after, right? Drugs, girls, parties, concerts, the beach, do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, money, I thought, well, this is what everybody wants in life, and now I've got it, and I've had it for a while, but seems like there must be something more, or I felt like I was missing something. And so that began the questioning, and then I began to leave the parties, and I began to go to the beach every evening at sunset time, and I did that for months on end, every single day. Never missed one day in months and months. I went to the beach and watched the sunset. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, and it was the most peaceful time I had throughout my whole day. And it was there that I began to hear the voice that said, why are you coming here to watch the sunsets? I don't know, they're beautiful, peaceful, I love it. And then eventually the question came, why don't you turn around and watch San Diego, or the lights of San Diego after the sun sets? Well, it's not pretty, it's not peaceful, I know what goes on there, it's ugly. And then came the question, who made San Diego? Who made San Diego? Man? Man made San Diego? Built the buildings, the highways. Man built San Diego. It's ugly. It's messed up. And then came the big question. Who made the sunset? Who made the sunset? Wow. I don't know, I'm gonna have to think about that one. Well, it didn't take me too many more sunsets, and that question kept coming. And finally I said, well, man didn't make the sunset, that's for sure. So maybe God made the sunset. God? I had never said that. God made the sunset. I didn't know if there was a God. But there had to be a God. Because I'm watching the sunset. There it is. It's here. I'm looking at it. It's real. And man didn't make it. It had to be created by God. Well, now I had a revelation that there is a God, for sure. So then my next question was, well, what about this Jesus guy? Is he real? What is that all about? And so, over the course of another few weeks or whatever, I decided I was going to go back up north. It was around Christmas time because, the one guy was in jail, the other guy was getting messed up, and I was kind of worried that, we might get busted for something. And so I thought, I'm going to get out of here for a while. I'm going to take a couple weeks, go up north for Christmas and just hang out with my friends and party, and, we'll just leave this for a while, let it calm down. So I got in a bug, drove up north, and there's a lot more of the story, and it's on my websites, and it's in the book, and all that stuff. You can read about it, or I've gone through it on my channel too. So I went up north. I'm living with some hippie friends, and one day I decided, okay, I gotta find out if this Jesus is real. Because if he's not, okay, then we're gonna do a little bigger drug business here. So I gotta find out if he's real. So I was in the shower one day, and I thought, okay. And I said, okay, Jesus, I don't know if you're real, but if you are real, then somehow let me know that you are real. And I've heard the story that you died on the cross for my sins and all that. So I'm asking you right now to come into my life, my heart, however that works. And I believe you're the Son of God, that you died and rose again for me. And if this is true, then somehow show me that it's true. Bam! 1 second later, I felt like this cajillion pounds of darkness just went. It just lifted off my life. It just went out through the ceiling. And I mean, it was so physically real that I said, wow, what was that? What was that? And all of a sudden, it was like, I felt lighter. I couldn't believe it. I got out of the shower and I thought, man, I'm gonna go see my mom. She'll know what happened. And so I'm outside, and everything's so bright, and the grass is greener, the sky is bluer. I get out and I ask my mom, and I said, man, what happened to me? I prayed this prayer. I had to find out if Jesus was real, and I said, I think that I just got saved. Well, of course, she knew what happened, and she was rejoicing with me. And it just happened to be on a Wednesday. And so Wednesday night, she took me to the Bible study. So we're coming to Bible study. I've got this long trench coat on and bell bottoms and long hair and everything. And these people are like stunned when I walk in the room. I mean, in those days you didn't see many hippies and a lot of churches or Bible gatherings. And that was early 1972. And she said, well, here's a seat for you. And I saw the piece of paper, had my name on it, and so I just sat down next to my brother, my dad, and my mom. And the people were just staring at me, and it was a little weird. I was a little intimidated. And the guy opened the service and they prayed, and then he said, "Oh, we got a visitor tonight. Why don't you stand up, tell us your name and a little bit about you?" I was like, "What? Are you kidding me?" So I stood up and I said, well, I said, "I'm Helen's youngest son, and my name's Larry, and I just got saved today." The place erupted. I was like, "God, what is going on?" Because I didn't know. I didn't know the story about my mom saving the 3 chairs for her family, believing they were already saved before anybody saw it. I didn't know that at that time. And so there was a great celebration, of course, and that was a wonderful time. I want to just say one more thing before I close this part of this, because this is a very important part of this believe and you receive when you pray. Earlier, before I got saved, I was in it was during that 3-year period where she was believing we were already born again and her family was saved. And in that, toward the end, after my brother got saved, somewhere there, I was up north and I had an old pickup up there, an old Ford clunky old pickup, and I had been to the beach with my brother, and we stayed a couple nights there and partied and everything, and then I had the old truck at his house, so I was driving that old beater truck home, and on the way home there was an intersection that had yield the right-of-way signs the way I was going, but nothing the other way. And it was out in this open field, and there'd been many accidents there, and people couldn't figure out how could anybody ever get an accident here when you can see everything coming. Well, the sun was setting, and I was driving, and they figured that I probably looked over, and this bigger, like 1-ton truck with a bunch of cows in the back and like 6 kids in the cab was coming down into this intersection as I was coming the other way. And I probably couldn't see because of the sun. And so she didn't see me either, I guess, maybe all the kids in the cab, whatever. Anyway, she hit me in my door. And I don't know how fast she was going, but she had the bigger truck. And my truck went up in the air somehow. I came out of the pickup. I landed in the ditch, and the truck landed on top of me. Her truck spun around, flipped over, the cows came out, a 7-year-old girl was killed, and it was a mess. One of my high school friends was working for the ambulance that day, and they came to that scene. So he told me later that they were taking care of all these children and trying to, and they didn't know where I was because I was under the truck. They couldn't see me, and they figured he's got to be crushed, he's dead. And so they were working with everybody else, and when they got done, they went over, and the truck was at an angle, and so they all got together and they pushed the truck over enough to pull me out. Well, I was still alive, and because the truck had landed in such a way that the pressure on my stomach from the axle bell housing thing was just barely pressing on my stomach, otherwise it would have just crushed me to death. And so they took me into the hospital and all that. Well, later on in life, I was in a time of prayer and worship and stuff just at home, and the Lord showed me a vision, just a small vision of that accident, because I couldn't remember the accident. I had a brain concussion, and so I remembered leaving my brother's house, and then I woke up in the hospital, and I didn't know anything in between. It's like I wasn't there, and you know, that's another deal. But in this vision, I saw the accident, and I saw my truck coming down on top of me, and there was a demon on one side of the truck and an angel on the other side. And as the truck came down, it went into very, very slow motion. And just in the last few feet before it hit me, the demon would push the truck over this way, so when it landed, it would kill me. And the angel would push it back over the other way, so when it landed, I would live. And when it got just 6 inches above me, the demon pushed it back over and said, "Larry is mine. He is not born again." And then I saw the angel push it back over to where it wouldn't kill me, and it came down the rest of the way. And the angel said to the demon, "You're right. He is not born again. But his mother believes that he is." His mother believes that he is. Well, let that one sink in for a while. That's how important this walk of faith is. That's how important this walk of faith is. Because it can be a matter of life and death and eternity in heaven or hell. And I was so shocked when I saw that little vision. And then the little testimony book I wrote, that was the title of it, "But his mother believes he is." And it's that story of how I came to faith. So, okay, it's a good place to end right there. And we'll go on with some other things that we were working on here, because I kind of broke into the lesson there with this part of the story, because this explains a lot about faith. So, God willing, I'll see you on the midweek one, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you hanging in there with me. I know this is not a lot of the big stuff that you get on all the other channels. I'm aware of that. You know, this is just basic stuff, but it keeps us on the path of transformation that we have to stay on all the way, because I see so many people that get off, they either never get on the path, or they maybe get on it and get off it again, or whatever. And it's very, very vital that we stay the course, we keep the faith, we finish the race, we fight the good fight all the way to the end. God willing, I'll see you in the middle of the week. Love you. God loves you. Bye-bye for now.